Right, lads, and welcome back to Everything Pats, your one-stop shop for everything St. Patrick's Athletic. I'm, of course, Everything League of Ireland, joined once again by my good friend Andrew Lanigan.
How you doing, lads? Basically, going to be doing a match preview for the big game today, or today when you're probably listening to this, against Shamrock Rovers in the President's Cup, the first real competitive game of the season. And yeah, it's really League of Ireland season. I'm very much looking forward to it. As of now, we're recording it the evening before, so it does feel a bit like Christmas Eve for myself. I don't know how Peter's feeling as well, but it's great to be back on to big games and seeing Pats consistently competing for trophies. And yeah, I look forward to the game today.
And later on, we'll also have an interview with St. Pat's historian Dermot Looney. That'll be coming up just after this President's Cup preview. Anyway, on the President's Cup, it's a game going into, on the surface, the game itself, to me, means absolutely nothing. The President's Cup, as in the trophy, irrelevant in my opinion. It's more so the fact that it's two teams that are probably, obviously Rovers are going to be challenging for the league. That's a given. But it's kind of to see almost where Pats are going to be in terms of performance wise. How are they going to show up to this game? At the end of the day, we haven't got a result in Tala in 8 years. Sorry, we haven't got a win in Tala in 8 years. So it'll be interesting to kind of see in that regard, can we get one over Rovers, and can it be the stepping stone into how we're going to do this season?
Yeah, Peter, 100% agree with you. Like, Rovers away, I think the sole like purpose behind the game, the reason why it's Rovers at the end of the day. We haven't had a good record at Tala as of recently, so it's a big game to test ourselves against the league champions. They're obviously going for five in a row as well, and yeah, we obviously lost there 2 years ago on penalties. On Doyle got the goal, and unfortunately, we just couldn't get the win. But yeah, as you were saying as well, like, I don't think anyone really cares about the trophy. Like, it'd be nice to kickstart the season with a trophy, but it's good to just get minutes into the lads before the big one against Galway next week, and hopefully get a good performance to put us, like, win, lose or draw, good performance. Great with the new lads gelling together before the big one against Galway next week. Win, lose or draw, but obviously it'd be great to beat Rovers away. It's always nice beating them, isn't it? Like, if it's bleeding it, win the throw in a friendly or in a cup final like we have tomorrow night. So listen, I'm in terms of expectations for the game, like, I'm gonna just rock up to Tala tonight, not hoping much or expecting much or expecting a win. Like, it throws away at the end of the day. Just putting a performance that would get fans off their feet, a few chances. Let's see Roy Heaton on the score sheet, him tearing their defence a new one. And Darragh Burns missing an open goal would be nice as well. That'd be great. But yeah, listen, obviously, when we won the President's Cup back in 2014, be a second time to win it this year. So it'd be nice to add another trophy to the cabinet, but at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world if we lose, is it? Just a minute to the lads and building up match sharpness for the big one against Galway next week.
Yeah, interestingly enough, actually, it's a rover. It's a trophy that both teams have only actually won once. Obviously, you said we won it in 2014. Rovers have only won it in 2022. Granted, it has only existed since 2014, so probably not the greatest metric. But yeah, like what I will say is, I think for Rovers, but realistically for both teams, there's not a massive amount of pressure on this game. I think going into it, Pats might be a bit more set up. Obviously, both teams being playing friendlies, but Rovers obviously in the Leinster Senior Cup were only really fielding their under 20s team. They weren't really actually playing the first team, whereas Pats in the Leinster Senior Cup did actually put out a pretty much a full team for all three games. So look, obviously we are it's true to the next round of Leinster Senior Cup. Not exactly some of the greatest performances, considering we drew to two Leinster Senior League sides. But yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting game anyway.
Definitely. Rovers have obviously tied down a good few of their star players, the likes of Gaffney, Jack Byrne, etc. And they've strengthened in a few areas. Josh Holdham from Cork City. They've re-signed Marcus Poom on loan. Got in Darragh Burns on loan, obviously familiar face. Stacey and goals, the former Cove Ramblers goalkeeper. So they haven't weakened themselves either, really, have they? They obviously lost Nad Razi, who apparently was going to be integrated into the first team this season. He's obviously gone to Como, but they haven't lost many, and a lot of people do expect them to go on and win five in a row. So as I said, be a good test for the lads tomorrow, see where we're at. And yeah, listen, in terms of starting 11 here, like I don't know what you go yourself, but in terms of my starting 11, I I'd love to see us go for it tomorrow. Like four, I don't know how Daly's going to set up, but I'd go to 4-3 personally. I'd start the Brazilian Pitaluga and go. I'd go Roy McLaughlin at right back. I do think he'll nail down that right back spot with Sam Curtis obviously heading over to Sheffield United. Going to go Connor Keeley because he has impressed very well in preseason. And obviously, beside captain Joe Redmond, who's been superb the past few years since he's joined. Obviously, Brian Boy Clancy. And then left back, obviously, Mr. Consistency, Anto Breslin. In midfield, obviously going for Jamie Lennon, the number 6, with Forrester and Levy, either of them. And I'd go Mulroney off the left, I'd start him off the left, and I'd go Brandon Cavan off the right, and then Roy Keaton up top. I think it's a nice balance, that team, and certainly, like, you've all different types of quality, different areas you can go at Rovers, and it's just all around an exciting team. You've obviously new players you can bring off the bench. We've a good bit of squad depth about us now as well, like off the bench. Obviously, losing Tommy Lonergan didn't really help to that, but we still have the likes of Mason Mealy, Keane Kavanagh, Aaron Bulger, even young players come through, Anto Dodd, Luke O'Brien, a lot of young players, Jay McKelland experience as well. So we've a lot of game changers, especially on the bench as well. So listen, it's an exciting time to be a Fats fan, and tomorrow night against Rangers is no different to like every new season.
Hey, who did you say it's
Like
set up front?
Roy Keane.
Did you not say you're playing four? Wait, do you not say 4-4-2? No.
No, 4-3-3.
Oh, sorry, I think you said 4-4-2.
No,
Would you not play Levy? You know?
I did say Levy. Said Lennon,
Oh,
Levy, and
mate,
Forrester
I think I'm
midfield.
just going mad at this point. Yeah, I
uh,
mean, I don't really have much disagreements with that lineup. I could see Aaron Bolger honestly coming in. I don't think he would start over Levy, but I think Bolger would be an interesting player to see. Schoberg could honestly start over McLaughlin.
yeah,
Obviously,
is he back to full fitness though? That's the thing. I don't. I
yeah, like that's the thing. Neither player really, had much game time last season. Obviously, McLaughlin, I think, joined halfway through the season. Schoberg obviously carrying an injury for a lot of the season, but so it in my opinion, it's kind of hard to tell who is the better player. Obviously, McLaughlin has more experience. He's probably done more as well, to be honest. For Pats, he's obviously assisted the goal for the semi final down in Cork, or it was the first or the second goal. First goal.
first goal, yeah,
Um,
Mark does though, yeah.
yeah. So I probably would be more inclined to go towards McLaughlin, although I wouldn't be surprised if Schoberg started either. Um, Look, it's a game that's probably going to be one in the midfield. Realistically, I do think Rovers have a bit of a stronger midfield than us. Like we do have a good midfield as well, obviously Forrester and all that, but just what Rovers have in the midfield, the likes of Jack Byrne. Jack Byrne, he's the one player I always fear because he can be doing nothing all game. He's like Mulroney. You just see him strolling around and all of a sudden grabs the ball and just produces a moment of magic.
We're
So, how well can
last
you
season,
keep him under wraps?
exactly. You seen it last year. I think it was Paddy's Day, if I'm not mistaken. The 2-2 game. Oh no,
It
could
was
have
a
been the game
3-2.
lost actually.
It was a 3-2.
Three,
He scored an
something like
absolute
that.
screamer. He just grabbed it from,
Just
I
got
want to
the
say, like, well outside the box,
yeah,
banged in.
just out nothing. Yeah, it's that type of player. Like so,
Yeah, look at, and then obviously other players like Rovers like have in terms of like Graham Burke. Can we keep him quiet? Obviously be a brilliant player. Um, how our centre backs going to deal? I think the likes of Redmond and Keeley should do fairly well to keep Rory Gaffney quiet. But then again, he is a player that can just he has that physicality. The likes of Richie Towell as well. Is he gonna try bully his way up that wing? Obviously, not exactly not a lot of Pats fans have nice things to say about Richie Towell, but yeah, and Trevor Clark as well. Him coming back now full fitness. I think Rover signed him again, on a permanent contract. He's going to be scary as well. So it's whether can we deal with them attacking players, and then like obviously Rory Keaton up front. Is he going to be able to cause a bit of trouble for their defenders up front? That's the real question.
yeah, exactly. Like he's Keaton, especially, he's impressed in preseason. Like he's bagged himself a few goals. Like obviously, can't not much from preseason. It's just getting the fitness, etc. But seeing it last season with Cork City, like he's just a terror for defense. Like pace, everything. Score with his left, score with his head. So I'm really excited to see him in action. Like we haven't realistically call a spade a spade. We haven't had a good striker properly since Christy Fagan. Like so,
Hmm.
hoping Keaton breaks the curse this season. Very excited to see him play. Like Cork fans
Yeah.
obviously good to
I,
lose him.
well, I think today will definitely be that big test for him, to be honest, because you are facing the best team in the league. They have been the best team in the league for the past 4 years. Obviously, he did do well at Cork, but now you're walking into a side that there's a lot more expected of you. At Cork, he was the main man because let's be honest, the team wasn't great at all. But now you're walking into this team that there is plenty of quality all around the pitch. And is he going to be able to show up in big games? That'll be the real question tomorrow. In terms of score predictions, Andrew, what are you going to go for?
Oh man, I'm feeling confident. I have to say, like, I don't think I'll be completely honest. I don't think we've ever predicted us to lose, like, properly, like, but it's throws away, like, first get comparison, obviously. We're coming back to cup final. I don't see why we can't go and win it. Like, honestly, I think they'll go to extra time. I'm gonna go 2-1 Pats after extra time. We got close last year, or not last year, the year
I
before in the
don't think there
Presidents
is
Cup.
extra
And
time.
is there
I
not? I
I
think there
don't think
is.
so. In 2022, there wasn't extra time. It went
Is
straight
there
to
not?
penalties.
No.
I don't think so. I'm almost dead certain 2022 it didn't go to extra time. I think it just went
Yeah,
straight
you
to
could be.
penalties.
You could be right. Pats 2, Rovers 1, Forrester and Roy Keaton to get the winner. That's what I'm gonna go for myself.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the exact same thing, to be honest. The two players I have a feeling they're gonna score, Rory Keaton, and unfortunately I do think Darragh Burns is gonna score. I just have that feeling in the back of my head that he's just gonna score. But yeah, I think look, there's not gonna be much in this game. I don't think either side's gonna win by more than one goal. Rovers could very much rout us. I can't see us winning by more than one goal. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's gonna be much in it, so I would say 2-1.
Yeah, exactly. Gotta edge us there. Personally, like I'm not gonna predict us don't lose. To be honest, like a win tomorrow, like probably wouldn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. But you think it would boost a bit of confidence, like going away to Rovers and winning, like because Rovers don't lose often at home. So going away, Rovers will obviously start their best team as well, get them fully shaped for next week also. So I think it would be a bit of a statement, like hang on, we're here, we're bound for the title, like so. Listen, looking forward to
It
the game
sets you off
tomorrow.
well.
Exactly, put your right in the right foot. So it's a big one, and hopefully we just get the job done. Good performance, no injuries, please God, and look forward to Galway next week. But it's very good to have Pats playing football again. Like it's unbelievable. Like the off season felt like years ago it did since we won the cup. So it's great to get back watching live football. Lads, that's all we have for the President's Cup. Upcoming next is Dermot Looney, very well known figure around the club of Pats. And it's an interview conducted by myself and Peter. So we do hope you enjoy all the background to Pats and listening to Dermot's stories about the club. Well, lads, welcome to episode 4 of Everything Pats, your one stop shop for everything Pats. Today, me and Peter are joined by Dermot Looney, well known for the history of Pats. Dermot, it's good to get you on the podcast. Obviously, you've been a long time Pats fan. Just tell us a bit about yourself. How did you get support in the club and being involved in the history of the club?
Howdy, lads. Thanks for having me on. Well done on the podcast. Look, I'm like yourselves, just a Pats fan, just a fan, nothing special. And I started following Pats when I was a teenager in the 90s. It's a long time ago, way before your time. And the Pat Dolan era, Brian Kerr was actually manager when I started going. And look, I've done a few bits over the years. When I started, we did a fanzine for a couple of years. I was involved in the Independent Saints Supporters Club and the SEI, and just various other little bits over the years, but just being a fan. But a few years ago, just decided to maybe get more involved in recalling the history of the club, put together the History St. Pat's project, which we, done the book, which is Saints Rising, which has gone really well. We've done a few events and talks and different bits, and we have a few other little bits planned for the season ahead. It's been great to be involved. Like, this is the best football club in the world. If you don't believe that, like, you have to be a bit crazy and a bit mad to support the League of Ireland team. And anyone who follows a football club kind of has to believe that their club is the best. And when we have an amazing history, and it's been great to kind of bring that to life a little bit and to keep doing that. In order for people to recognise that this isn't a flash in the pan thing, this is a community thing that's been going for almost 100 years and needs to go for a few hundred more. So, like ourselves, just a fan, but try and promote the club and celebrate it.
Obviously, Dermot, then you were talking about, 100 years of history. Many people might not be aware of, the early years of the club, but can you kind of tell us a bit of, how the club came into being?
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. And a lot of lads and girls listening to the podcast will have read the book, Saints Rising, and I try and tell the story as best I can in it. For people who don't know, like, Pats are really weird in that we were formed in 1929. We didn't play competitively until 1930. And it was basically formed by a group of young lads in the railway works in Inchicore. But there had been a previous, in fact, more than one previous club called St. Patrick's. And they kind of took the name from that club. In fact, the first club was as far back as 1898. The same kind of idea. Teenagers from the CIE works, or the GSR, GSWR works as it was then, they set up the club. So all the way forward in 1929, 30 years later, these lads set up St. Patrick's. They put athletic on it because there were too many St. Patrick's clubs already. And they started competing in the kind of lowest level of football that was available at the time, which was the Intermediate League, a kind of an underage league that took place mainly in the Phoenix Park and then some other grounds dotted around the area. And right from the start, were hugely successful. And Pat's battled through kind of lower league football for years, been really successful and climbing their way through the system until they got to the League of Ireland in 1951. So, it's been great to tell that story. There's been lots of relatives of past players and people involved in the club who really enjoyed hearing that and looking at the research that we've done to bring that team and those players and officials to light again. So Pats are not as old as the other big Dublin clubs, but we are at least as successful since we entered the league as most of them, and have done great things. But the history of Pats isn't just 1929. It actually does go a bit further back to the history of Inchicore football and the original St. Patrick's all the way back in the 19th century.
And then, like, obviously, in terms of, as you mentioned, joining the League of Ireland, why was there so much time between obviously playing Leinster Senior League early on before there was kind of the jump to joining the League of Ireland?
Yeah, so Pats got up to the Leinster Senior League in 1939, right? So, 10 years after they were formed, they'd been playing in the Intermediate League first and then the AUL. These are leagues that the AUL people are still very familiar with, I'm sure. And so they got into the Leinster Senior League in those days, had two divisions only. So they got into the Leinster League Division 2, or second flight of it. And they were there for a few years from 39 up to the 40s, and eventually got promoted to the Leinster Senior League Division 1. And they won that 4 times on the trot. So what was happening was that was the only division outside the League of Ireland. The League of Ireland during the war went down to as few as 8 teams. I think they had about 10 teams by the late 50s. And Pats kept, or by the late 40s, excuse me. And Pats kept applying to join that League of Ireland and being rebuffed. And, other teams got in ahead of them. And they kept winning the Leinster Senior League. They couldn't go any further. So eventually, I think the League of Ireland clubs did let Pats in after, I think, on the 4th attempt of trying. My theory on it is that the other clubs were quite fearful of St. Pat's because they had built up a huge base of supporters and some great players in non-league football. As a non-league club, they'd already beaten Bows and Shells and indeed Shamrock Rovers, Drumcondra, who were the other big Dublin club at the time. So I think the Dublin clubs are certainly a bit fearful of the new kid on the block, and they were right to be, because the first year Pats entered the league in 1951, they actually won the league, which is pretty historic, pretty unique, and an occasion, I think, which we've tried to celebrate as a club a bit more in recent years. It's a story that people didn't know a lot about, and it's been great to bring that to light a bit, that team that entered the League of Ireland and won it the first attempt.
Obviously, then jumping ahead a bit, Pats in the League of Ireland kind of had sporadic success in terms of winning trophies throughout the years up until the 1990s. How much did the likes of Brian Kerr and Pat Dolan, coming into the club, change the attitude to say, we're not just another Dublin club here. We're here to actually challenge the other big Dublin clubs. Here to basically keep our place.
Yeah, you're right. And Brian Kerr is hugely important, but there are lots of people who came before Brian are vital. And I think like people whose names are sometimes lost, like club officials who kept the thing going in the 60s and 70s when we weren't really winning anything. They're super important because the club could have gone under a few times. When the League of Ireland was split for the first time into Premier and First Division in 1985, Pats were nearly relegated that season. We only stayed up, I think, in the second, if not the last game of that season. And imagine being relegated the first time the First Division came in. It would have been really hard to get back to the Premier. So it's not just about people like Brian and Pat and all those great figures from the 90s and so on. It is about the people who kept the thing alive in the 60s and 70s, kept everyone entertained, kept the club going, raising money, running bingo as they used to do, and things like that. But when Brian Kerr came in 1986, they hadn't won anything of significance since the FAI Cup in 1960. 5 years since the club has really competed at a high level. And he immediately kind of set about bringing in his own squad, bringing in players from reserve football, bringing in lads from Leicester Senior League, and then also kind of experienced pros, because Pats were still a small club financially. Rovers were kind of 4 in a row. Rovers team were around at the time. Rovers were hugely successful financially, although they were getting kicked out of their home at the time. And Brian did amazing things in his first full season in charge. They were only beaten in the last game of the season by Dundalk to lose the league. And then in 89-90, he won the league. It was the first time since 50s that we won the league. The first time our name was kind of back in lights at that stage. And, they moved out of Richmond Park and were in Harold's Cross for a couple of years. And people like Pat Dolan and Tim O'Flaherty and dozens of others, like there's so many, way too many to name, helped the club get back to Richmond, which was really, really looked like it wasn't going to happen. And the club nearly did go bankrupt. It was a few hours away from bankruptcy in the early 90s. To get back to Richmond, to get back to Inchicore, and then to build and capable of winning the league as we did 3 times in the late 90s was phenomenal. And like that was a brilliant time. That was when I started really going to games and getting into it. It was a deadly time to be involved. The Stadium of Light, as Pat Dolan nicknamed it, Richmond Park, there was big crowds. It was a huge, intense rivalry with Shells and with Cork City, we were competing with for leagues. And then you had the Marnie Gate affair and all that, the kind of season we won the league where it was kind of taken from us in the early 2000s. So brilliant time to be involved. But those people, Pat Dolan, Brian Kerr, Brian Kerr is the most significant, of course, but people like Pat Dolan, Tim O'Flaherty was chairman at the time, Andy O'Callaghan who came in. There's dozens of great people who we need to celebrate and thank for what they've done for St. Pat's, because kind of put us back up there among the big names in Irish football.
All right, Dermot, I just want to ask you, obviously Brian Kerr is a big character around the club, league title winner 1990 and 1996. What was it like to input, obviously, on your book, Saints Rising? And in terms of Saint Rising itself, did you anticipate you'd get the success you got from it? And is there any news on a second book coming anytime soon?
3 great questions, Andrew. Brian Kerr, for us, what was Brian Kerr's input? Brian Kerr's input was phenomenal to the book and to promoting our history. We've done a few things. We did a brilliant talk. Some people would have been at last May in Richmond Barracks about Brian's time in charge. And it was really excellent. So Brian's done quite a lot. He was down at our event we did just before the cup final in the Saint, and gave great reminiscences about his time in charge. But his forward in the book, the piece he has written, it's just phenomenal. It's a great piece of writing, a great piece of storytelling about how he became a fan at a very young age, and then he became a manager of his boyhood club, and then brought him to great heights. So that's been really significant. In terms of the success of Saints Rising, it's been brilliant, but it's only been brilliant because the fans really got behind it. So right from early days, like the patron saints helped to fund the book. I think nearly 100 people contributed to our Kickstarter and got the book into print. Their names are at the front of the book. And then people bought it in huge numbers. Like when I was originally looking at it, I didn't know how many it would sell at all. I went to Carl in the club shop, who people will know, and I suggested that we might do a print run of about 300 or something like that, because I didn't really know how many it would sell. And Carl was pushing me to get a much higher figure. So in the end, we actually printed 1,250 books, and they were sold out. They sold out within a year, completely sold out the books. So we had to get a second print run, which arrived in December there. And the sales of that have been pretty good. So if you haven't got one yet, I would say to people, try and get one if you can. They're €25, which isn't the cheapest, I know, but we've tried to keep the cost down as much as we can. And I think it's a great read for anyone. Like I know, like a lot of young lads will follow your podcast, and like people maybe aren't that big into reading books and stuff. This is a great one to have as a Pats fan. It's a great one to read in chunks and just get a sense of the club that we're all following, where it came from. Because I think when you get a sense of where it came from, you might have a better sense of where it might go as well. In terms then, sorry, Andrew, of your last question about a second book, I don't know. What do you think?
I'd be all for.
I'd definitely be up for it as well. Like, especially the first book as well. Like, I really enjoyed it as well. Like, I got it as a Christmas present there last year, and it was a good read. Like, taught me a lot of stuff I don't know, because obviously you know a lot more than us about the club. Like, I only got supporting the club say like past 8 years or so. Like, so it was a great read. Definitely be up for a second book, 100%. Don't know about Peter now.
Oh no, I don't know. To be honest, I wouldn't be the biggest reader. Definitely in my youth I would have read a lot more, but it definitely would be something that I would read. Even I'd more so if there's ever an audiobook version, yourself.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I am interested because it was suggested to me that we should maybe look at doing an audiobook, and there's a bit of a cost, unfortunately, involved in doing an audiobook, and the likes of Audible and stuff taking absolute fortune. So would we break even? I don't know, but it's something we will explore doing. And I like in terms of a second book, it's a big ask, I suppose. Yeah. It's not just me who could do it as well. There's plenty of great writers and journalists out there. But I have begun kind of some research that will certainly feed into that. About Pats, particularly in the 60s and 70s, which is an era I don't know a lot about. And there's some amazing characters who were involved there. There were managers like, you might not know these names. These are incredible figures. I call John Coleraine, who did amazing things as manager of Glentoran and came down and managed us in the 60s. Jack Burkett, who was a West Ham player from England, came over and had a great career here as manager. Did really well, actually successful, but also found a real home and a great atmosphere. And there's some brilliant yarns in a book I actually managed to uncover that he had written or was written about him. And then Barry Bridges, who was this great character who came from Chelsea and brought over the likes of Gordon Banks and other stars from across the water. So like these figures and the times that Pats had, even though they weren't successful on the pitch in the 60s and 70s, going in then to the 80s and the Paul McGrath playing for the season, Charlie Walker being the manager, and on to Brian Kerr. There's great stories to be told. So look, I'd like to do it in a book, but it won't necessarily be this year when that's done. But we hope to be able to tell those stories. So one way I'm going to do that is in the club program. So I wrote in the program for a few years. I took a break last year, but I'm back in it again this year. And we're kind of doing a season by season thing. I think we left off in the mid 60s the mid 50s. And we're going to keep going with that. So if people get the program, and we'll also put it up online and stuff so people can have a read of some of the stories from that time. And then eventually, I would love to do a second book. But there's other people, as I said, who are capable of writing great tales about Pats. And one thing we've got, lads, is that I suppose there's much more of a sense of the importance of the history and heritage of the club. So I know that the patrons are going to do some work. And like there's some very practical things we could all do. Like there should be a plaque, for example, celebrating our first game in Phoenix Park. I don't know why it's not there. Well, I do know why the OPW who run Phoenix Park haven't been particularly fond of doing stuff like that. But we should be commemorating. We'll be 100 years old very soon, and there should be plaques up. And we should be doing more and more events with ex-players. There's some brilliant characters from the teams of the teams of the 90s that people would love to hear their stories. And I know younger lads like yourselves might not have seen Eddie Gormley and Paul Ozam and people in person. I don't know if you did, but they will have brilliant stories and tales that again helped us make us the club that we are now.
Yeah, no, I have to say, like from a personal perspective, books like that, they do help me a lot because obviously I do research myself into all League of Ireland stories, and you're digging through the internet, and in all honesty, there's not a massive amount of information. Like you're almost pulling from multiple different sources, digging through all the articles. So it's nice to have books like that, books about particular clubs that you can just pick up, skim through, find what you're looking for in terms of the history of a certain club. I know Rovers and Bows and pretty much every single other club has dedicated books, and they are useful resources in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, like the internet and like we all use Wikipedia and we all use these sources. Very often they're not accurate, and that's unfortunate about it. It's really hard to get, unless you're really on like if there's a proper historian blogging or someone with a real engaged interest. Like for years and years, said Pats moved into Richmond Park in 1930, and they didn't move there till 39. It was on the first, it's in the first kind of sentence or two of our Wikipedia page. If someone corrected that, fair play to whoever did that, but like there was a lot of there's inaccuracies and stuff on the internet, and books and proper research projects will go a good way. Like, because we should remember what's correct. Like, it's a great mystery to me why Pats were formed in 1929 but didn't play competitively until 1930. I don't know for sure. I don't know if anyone still alive knows for sure why they didn't do that. So there's all these mysteries and things, and it's okay sometimes to say in history, well, actually, I don't know what happened there. We'll try and look into it. We'll try and dig into it. But sometimes there are little kind of interesting mysteries as to why things happened or didn't.
I do want to actually come back to something you previously mentioned. That kind of notorious 2001 or 2001 season. Obviously, a lot of younger fans might not be fully familiar what happened that season. With Shells, would you be able to run us through what exactly kind of happened that season?
I'm not sure I could without the help of lawyers, to be honest, right? Because it's really, really tricky, and there are a lot of Pats fans who think they know the full story. I think I have a sense of the full story, but I don't know it for sure. And it would make a very interesting piece in a future history book. But again, I will get some legal people involved, because there's a lot of conflicting stories with regard to it. In essence, Pats had a player called Paul Marney. And Paul, he was a midfielder and he was from England. He played at different positions, actually. He played full back occasion for us as well. Decent player, but not kind of one of our stars. And he'd been playing for us, I think, the previous season. But that season, anyway, it was noticed that his registration form wasn't correctly filled in for whatever reason. The person who noticed, or the person who certainly pushed it the hardest, what happened to be the chief executive of Shelbourne. So that was a difficulty. Pats were docked, I can't remember, was it 9 or 15 points? They were docked loads of points for Paul Marney, but actually on appeal, they got those points back. So everything looked like it would still be fine, and Pats were kind of challenging for the league. Only for there to be another registration issue discovered, and that was Charles Babas Livingston, our brilliant Ugandan winger and forward. And the points were actually deducted for him. And so the league was awarded to Shelbourne, and Pats were appealing it, and there was court cases, and there were all sorts of things said about it. Apparently, someone did a trawl of all the registrations for all the clubs, and there were hundreds of errors across the league. So it wasn't just Pats. But anyway, the case was eventually dropped. Shelbourne competed in the next season's Champions League qualifiers, but Pats were kind of, the FAI awarded Pats the title of Champions of Ireland, and Shells were called the League Champions. There was some kind of deal done or something about that. I think the Pats players did receive medals in the end. I think they were fairly disgusted that they weren't the actual league medals. I think I heard one of the players say they threw it away. So it was a really controversial season. I think Pats felt they were done up, and that they were unfairly targeted for a clerical error, because these players were clearly Pats players. It wasn't as if anyone was trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes. But other clubs will say, well, look, the forms weren't filled in right, or they weren't in on time, or whatever exactly happened with them. It seems clear that there were loads of issues with loads of registrations across the league. Pats were the ones who suffered. And that title will always have an asterisk beside it, whether you give it to Pats, as we do, because the club officially recognises that as a title-winning season, or you give it to Shells. It will still have this kind of asterisk and this kind of question over it. But it was a fascinating time to be involved. We won the league up in Oriel Park in Dundalk. We had a brilliant night. I put up a picture of it recently on the History St. Pat's Instagram and Twitter, and I got a huge reception from the picture of the fans with their red and white checkered flags, and we celebrated long into the night. I remember in MacDowell's pub. I remember drinking with Charles Babas Livingston that night and having the crack. So fascinating time to be involved, but it's a pity because we won it on the pitch, and it should be recognised certainly internally as our time.
Yeah, Dermot, I just obviously like to ask you, from your perspective, how the club has changed over the years. Obviously, you've seen Pats at their highest, obviously nearly getting relegated, winning league titles, all that, attendances. Just, I want to get your input on things, on where you think the club's going, like on an upward spiral. Overall, like the past few years, personally, attendances wise, have been an all-time high. Like for me, my first Pats games in 2015, 2016. I remember going to Derry at home, only 800 people or something showed up. Like, and now we've over 2,000 season ticket holders. Like, obviously the development and continued upward trajectory of the club. It's obviously from your perspective, it's probably great to see as well, as much as it is for the younger fan base like ourselves. Like,
yeah, and like I think, to be honest, this is just a really exciting time to be a Pats fan. It's a really exciting time to be a League of Ireland fan. Like, I'm not that old. I'm just gone 40, so there's people a lot older than me around the club who've been around since. We fans who went to games in the 1940s, would you believe, who are still going to games now. And so those people who were going to games in the 50s and 60s would be better placed to comment on, where we compare with, for example, the great teams of the 50s who won leagues, and the cup winning teams of 59, 61. And there are some older fans, and it's always worth chatting. I think for any younger fans, listen, if you're on an away trip or a European trip or something, and you get chatting, or even just in the pub or somewhere around Inchi Cork, get chatting to older fans, because they'll tell you great stories, and it's really worth listening to them and getting a sense of where the club was at the time. From my perspective, it's a really exciting time to be a fan. The team are very exciting, and there's some brilliant players. But I do think it's off the field. Where we're going is going to be really interesting. Are we going to be able to harness the momentum that's clearly there from the 2 cup finals and the big attendances? Are we going to harness that properly? Are we going to be able to push for the new ground that we all hope for? And is the team going to be able to push on and challenge for the title this season? Well, look, I think I'd be very happy, and I think you guys talk a lot about where you think we're going to finish this season. Like, I would still be happy with us challenging for the European spot. I'm in around the kind of title race for a part of the season. I'm sure good run in Europe. We can't over expect sometimes. All fans are in danger of doing this, where we say, "Oh, we're going to win the title." It never works like that. We've 10 new players in that squad. It will take a long time for them to gel and for the right team to be picked. So I wouldn't be over ambitious for the season ahead, but for the medium term future, really, really hopeful for our club and for our league in terms of the progress we can make. And I think it's a good place to be right now. And I think people who have been involved in that, behind the scenes, so Gareth Kelleher, obviously, and people who work for the club have done phenomenal work, and the community work that's going on. But like, a big special shout out to like younger fans and the SEI and people who get the atmosphere going in the ground. They have played a massive part. I think that's sometimes underappreciated, the role of the fan base in promoting, great atmosphere, positivity, great relationship with the players. That's been a brilliant thing to see in the past few years since COVID.
Well, I think that's about all we have anyway. In terms of the questions wise, Dermot, once again, I'd like to thank you for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks, lads. Come on, the Saints.
Much appreciated, Dermot. All the best. Obviously, you do have a few socials yourselves. You run the History St. Pat's Instagram page and the Twitter page, and obviously you have your own socials as well. D Looney on Twitter, as far as I'm aware. So make sure you do go check Dermot out on Twitter and Instagram. And Dermot, thanks very much, and hopefully a successful season ahead for the Saints.
Thanks, lads.